So as we suggested earlier, if you've got a table and a book on it that's not moving, that means because there is always weight, there is always a W equals mg. There's always weight. We said that earlier. And because there's always weight, that means there's going to be a weight force downward. And the reason that it doesn't move is because there's going to be a normal force upward.
Yes.
So what is this normal force? Well, this normal force represents the force of the table on the book.
Yes.
Now, in this example here anyway, how big is this normal force?
Same as the Y force.
Right. So if we make some assumptions, right? If we make the assumption that, you know, there's nothing else happening here, the normal force must equal weight, right?
Yes.
All right. Now imagine, is the normal force always equal to weight?
Yes.
Well, see, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Because, see, here it's equal to weight, yes?
Mm-hmm.
But imagine now, I mean, I have a very similar situation, but not exactly the same. So you can imagine that I've got a weight force here, right?
Yeah.
And now you want to have some fun or something. You decide to push down on the book, right? You put your hand on the book and you push it downward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can apply a force to the book and push it downward, right?
Yeah.
Does the book move?
No.
No. But you've applied more force on the book, right?
Yeah.
How can the book not move?
Because it's applied up to my hand.
So, you know, you're applying a force to the book, so the book is going down, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
How can the book not move? You've applied a downward force. How is it possible that the book doesn't go more downward? That it doesn't go, you know, why does the book not go through the table? Because right now, if you're telling me there's a normal force like before,
Mm-hmm.
and the normal force equals the weight, well then you've got a force downward overall, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a force downward overall, then the acceleration should go down, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we know that the book just doesn't move, right? It's still stationary, right?
Yes.
So how do we explain that?
Because normal force is also increased.
Yeah, exactly. So does the normal force always equal the weight?
Yeah.
Well, what did you just say? What happened to the normal force?
Increased.
So does the normal force equal the weight?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't, right? It equaled it before, but here the normal force doesn't equal the weight anymore. So in this example here, the normal force must be greater than the weight. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
So it's not equal anymore. And let's hypothetically imagine that now you attach a string to the book, right? And you pull up on the book. So you still have weight,
Mm-hmm.
and this time you decide to pull up on the book slightly, small pull, but not hard enough that the book will lift off the table, right? So you pull very lightly, but not enough so that the book is still on the table, right?
Yes.
So in this case, does the book move if you pull very, very lightly? You pull, but very lightly. If you pull
No.
very lightly, will the book move? It's a heavy book and you pull lightly.
No.
No. So acceleration is still 0, right?
Yes.
But I mean, if you pulled up, why won't the book move? Because you pull it up, right?
Yeah.
What can you tell me about the normal force? Because look, put it this way. The book didn't move, right?
Yeah.
Which means the acceleration is 0, right?
Yeah.
And if acceleration is 0, the net force is 0, right?
Yes.
So that means the normal force must have decreased.
Yeah.
So that means here, in this situation, the normal force is the less than the weight. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So firstly, is the normal force equal to the weight, yes or no?
No.
Basically, we can't say it is equal to the weight. I mean, there could be situations where it is, like this, right?
Yes.
But importantly, we need to firstly understand that we don't know what the magnitude of the normal force is. So the magnitude of the normal force is unknown in general. So unlike, weight, we can't just calculate W equals mg or whatever, is not known.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can work it out using analysis of the situation and, and then use F equals ma, etc. But there is no formula for it. It's not like there's a W equals mg version. We can't just go, hey, I've got blah, blah, okay, n equals blah. Like there's no formula. You need to sort of analyze the situation. You need to know the acceleration.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yes.
Okay. And I think importantly, we need to talk about what is the normal force exactly. Well, without getting into too technical details, just staying at this sort of level, the normal force is the force between two surfaces in contact, right? If a book is not on the table, can the table push the book?
No.
No. So it's like a plane, right? Plane is in midair. Is it touching the ground?
No.
So is there a normal force when it's in midair?
No.
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
Now, if it's on the ground, is there a normal force?
Yes.
Right? So therefore, for a normal force, because it's between two things in contact, you need to be in contact. If you're not in contact, you don't have a normal force. I mean, you might have other forces, but it's not a normal force, at least the way we're defining it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, is that part clear?
Yeah.
All right. The next thing I want you to consider and think about is, well, with our normal force, which direction does it act? What's the direction of the normal force?
Up,
Is it always up?
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you, the normal force is between two forces in contact, right? Two surfaces in contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got something, if I push against the table pushes me up, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of thing, right? Now, if I push against the wall, that's a normal force, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because it's any surface, right? So as long as I push against the surface, it's a normal force, yes?
Yes.
All right, so if I push against the wall, it's also a normal force, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Which it is. All right, so if that means, if you tell me the normal force is up, that means when I push against the wall, I'll get a force upward, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means I should go up the wall. I should be able to climb up a wall by pushing against the wall then. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So can I climb up a wall by pushing against the wall? Can I just push the wall and climb upward?
No.
No, I can't.
Yeah.
So let's think about it, right? If you've got a wall and I push against the wall, so I push against the wall. So let's say I push the wall this way. That's my push. What does the wall do to me?
Mm-hmm.
Which way does the wall push?
The opposite direction.
Correct. So the normal force in that case is to the right in my example here.
Yes.
So which direction is the normal force? If in my left top direction, it's, up, and in my bottom direction there, it's to the right, what's the direction of the normal force?
Opposite to the weight force.
Opposite to the weight force, did you say?
Yeah, opposite to the weight force.
Well, the weight here is down actually, so it's not opposite to the weight force. It's not opposite to the weight force. Because if it's opposite to the weight force, it would be up, and it's not up here.
So it's opposite to the force.
Well, what if I gave you this situation? So to be clear, the weight force in this case is down, right? So there's still weight, all right? And let's say I push it this way. So I'm going to push it up the hill. So I'll just push this way, right? Do you know which way the normal force goes?
Opposite to the push.
So you think like this, like the yellow? That's what you think, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not actually. It will be in this direction. So I want you to take a look at those situations. I mean, I've given you 3 examples here, and see if you can find a pattern.
Hi sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if you can find a pattern between them. Take a look at those 3 examples and see if you can find a pattern between what the direction of the net force, of the normal force is.
It's opposite to the ground.
I think you're on the right track. What do you mean by opposite to the ground? Be more specific, but you're on the right track.
Like opposite to the line that the object at or on.
But what do you mean by opposite?
Like in another direction?
You're not being clear enough, but you're on the right track though. The fact that you're focusing on the ground is correct. It's got something to do with the ground, but opposite doesn't really describe it properly. So consider, so you're on the right track though, that's very good. Consider the ground, what the direction of the ground is, and consider, you know, the normal, and see if you can find a relationship between the two. You're on the right track, you're looking at the right things. It's to do with the ground, because the normal force is from the ground after all. And it's to do with the direction of the normal force and the direction of the ground. And opposite is not the right word. But I think you're on the right track. You just need to think a little bit more about the two directions here, because this is two-dimensional, right? So how do you talk about directions in 2 dimensions? What do you focus on in 2 dimensions? In terms of direction?
Yeah.
What do you focus on in 2 dimensions?
X and Y.
I mean, in 1 dimension, you just go right or left or up or down or positive or negative, right?
Yeah.
But for 2 dimensions, what tells you your direction in a vector?
Oh, yes.
You need to actually tell me, not just say yes. What tells you the direction?
Like southeast or southwest.
Okay, so that's closer. It's to do with the angle, right? So you're on the right track. So you want to look at the angle, okay? And so in a way, you know, southeast, southwest kind of can refer to angles, right? So what's the relationship between the normal force direction, because we're focusing on direction now, what's the relationship between the normal force direction and the ground direction?
To
the relationship between the normal force direction and the ground direction. Well, basically, if you take a look, the normal force direction in this case is up.
yeah.
And this ground is like this. So this is perpendicular. This ground is like this. The normal force is like this, perpendicular.
Oh, yes.
Ground is like this. Normal force is like this, perpendicular. So importantly, what we're saying is the normal force is always perpendicular to the surface. That is the key takeaway here.
Yeah.
And you might not know this actually, but do you know what normal is in science and maths? So you might not have done this yet at this point in time. You may, or I mean, you might not have come across this, but basically the normal is the line perpendicular to the tangent, which must therefore be, you know, parallel to the surface. So the tangent is parallel to the surface, and the normal is just 90 degrees to that. That's why it's called the normal force.
Okay.
It's the normal force because it's in the normal direction. So you may have come across this when you did like, waves and, refraction and so forth. You need to draw a normal line. That normal line is perpendicular, right?
Mhm.
So going back to our summary here, your normal force requires contact between the surfaces. The magnitude is unknown, requires analysis. And that direction, importantly, is always perpendicular to the surface. If you have a curved surface, then it's a tangent to the surface. It's perpendicular to the tangent to the surface. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Good. Now, there are a few other forces that we will kind of fill in here, okay? I'll just briefly, we'll leave it at those two for the moment. As we mentioned before, there are other forces like tension that we'll need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be friction that we'll need to talk about. And other things like sort of air resistance and so on. Now, I'll just briefly cover them here, but we will talk about them more later. So tension is basically when you've got a string. Magnitude is also unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Also relies on analysis. And the direction is always along the string. Friction, it needs contact surface. Magnitude, well, we'll do this a bit later, but it's equal to mu times n as the F max. We'll definitely be doing that. And it's always against either, the velocity, if moving, or the applied force,
Mm-hmm.
net force, if V equals 0. Air resistance basically requires some sort of relative motion. The magnitude will be given if they want you to calculate it. Otherwise, they won't ask you to calculate it. And the direction, again, will be against, the direction of motion. So these ones down here, we'll talk about more in the coming weeks. I don't want to just throw all of them to you just right now, but I've given you the sort of brief outline here. What we're going to be focusing more on right now, though, is on the questions. Okay?
Yes.
And so let's try to, make sure you try to do some questions, because that's what's really a lot more important here. So we will now be trying to focus only on just, the Newton's 3 laws, and you've got weight, and you've got sort of normal. Those are really the ones we'll be focusing on for some time. And we'll just introduce more and more as the questions, get harder and so forth. All right.